So the Bank of Canada has just cut rates by 50 basis points. This is actually a lot less than I expected. I actually thought they might even cut by 1%. So it's really interesting what's happened here. Obviously, the Bank of Canada has completely crushed the economy. And even as they bring down rates, the economy just isn't going to springboard back and inflation is going to go higher. It's going to take a long time. Obviously, there's lag effects that are at play here. So first of all, let's get into what they did. So they reduced the policy rate to 3.75%. Right now, what's happening with the Canadian dollar is literally, it's right in the way there. So literally what's happened is it shot up. This is USD CAD. So as this goes up, basically the US dollar is strengthening against the Canadian dollar. And basically you can see here that it went up to this high, which it got to previously over here on the chart. And now it's kind of just going around. So it didn't break that level. So that could mean that it is possible that the Canadian dollar, it's not actually going to tank from here. It might actually go on a rally. I think the market was broadly expecting what we've seen today, which is 50 basis points. That was the consensus that the market had for the interest rate cut. So the Bank of Canada today reduced its target for the overnight rate to 3.75% with the bank rate at 4% and the deposit rate at 3.75%. The bank is continuing its policy of balance sheet normalization. Now, interestingly enough, I was talking to Hilliard about this the other day. I've got an interview that will be coming out with him. And it's interesting because I was asking him, does the Bank of Canada really look at the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar? Do they really factor that into their decision? He said that, yeah, they probably do look at it, but it probably doesn't make up that much of their decision. But today, dropping by 50 basis points is really not what a lot of people would have expected. We've had the mainstream media calling this jumbo rate hike is on the way. 50 basis points and a jumbo hike. I mean a jumbo cut. We saw more of a rate hike in the rate hiking cycle. I think at one point they were hiking by 1%, 100 basis points. So that is more of a jumbo rate hike than this 50 basis points cut that we've got here. So the bank continues to expect the global economy to expand at the rate of about 3% over the next 2 years. Growth in the United States is now expected to be stronger than previously forecast, while the outlook for China remains subdued. Obviously, the Chinese real estate market blowing up in a way that, well, it's essentially imploding is what's happening in China. So that's very interesting, the dynamics that are going on there. Obviously, China, massive economy, has huge impacts on the global economy. Just like the United States, it's arguably the biggest economy in the world or the second largest economy in the world, and it's having a huge impact. And obviously, Chinese real estate investing spread to the West in a huge way, to Canada, the United States, to the UK, all these different places. Thank you for hitting the like button. I keep seeing it come up on the screen, so thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Helps spread the word that we're live here. So in Canada, the economy grew at around 2%. That's if you believe Statistics Canada. Obviously, the Bank of Canada is going off Statistics Canada's fake numbers. We know the economy isn't expanding at this. David Rosenberg recently came out and said, if you just subtract the population growth, Canada's economy has been in a full-blown recession for nearly 2 years now. And you can literally just get rid of it because it's all fake growth. The reality is you're seeing unemployment lines. You're seeing lines at food banks. This is Great Depression level stuff. For a lot of people who are unaffected by this, they think, things are still good. They're still rosy for me until they lose their job. That was me back in 2011. I thought, I'm never going to lose my job. Engineering's a sure bet. And I lost my job. The whole company that I was working for, which was doing medical products, so if you thought anything was going to have stability, it was in healthcare and medical, and they went bust. Everything went to China. And now, obviously, manufacturing's coming back, but it can happen to anybody. And you really just don't expect it. But I know how people feel when they think that they have that job security, but it can vanish quicker than you think. So anyway, overall, the Bank of Canada is forecasting GDP growth of around 1.2% in 2024. I mean, that's pretty low, especially when you subtract what's happening with the population growth. All the public spending, if you just subtract public spending and population growth, there is no shadow of a doubt that Canada is in a depression. And then if you take away the housing market and all the money in GDP that generates, I mean, it's just even worse. It really is. And I don't see any political party willing to address this. Conservatives, they want to go more down the road of increasing housing GDP, essentially, with this bill plan, not addressing the root cause of the issue of the housing supply problem. If there even is one, it's debatable because of the basement suites, thousands and millions of basement suites. But anyway, CPI inflation has declined. So we know the inflation rate has dropped significantly. We have to talk about this because obviously inflation coming down is happening because the Bank of Canada is crushing the economy. And it won't just come roaring back as soon as they take off. You know, unless something that we don't know about happens that really pushes up inflation, World War III, and I really do not hope for any of those scenarios to happen. But unless something that we don't know about happens, I think you're going to see continued inflation come back down because you're starting to see rent prices that are coming back down. Even though rent inflation is still at a massive high right now, shelter makes up a huge component of that CPI. And essentially, as rents come down, that's going to more and more affect it, especially with people's mortgage payments that are coming down, although still high, and lots more people are renewing into these higher rate mortgages who can't afford it, and they're having to sell their house because they can't afford it. So more and more, you're going to see that dynamic at play. I've seen a few mainstream media articles on it that I want to cover next week about it that are very interesting. So the interest rates coming back down. Let's see what's going on with the Canadian dollar. It's still kind of yo-yoing around, not really doing anything here. I'm not really going to expect too much. I really don't think the Canadian dollar is going to start crashing. If we broke this low when the announcement happened, because that would have been a fundamental that affects it. If the market was expecting that 50 basis points, they came out with 1%. Yeah, I think we could have definitely seen this break. But you can basically see how it's just scraping along the bottom here. The Canadian dollar still down today, down about 0.2%. So you're still down today, but you can see how it's just been bouncing around this low here. It's just waiting to break this 71 cents, and then next low it's going to head down to is 68 cents. And obviously, you know, there's protection that you can find in the US dollar to a certain extent, but then you've also got the Canadian dollar gold. Obviously, gold has just skyrocketed of recent. You can see it's just hitting all-time high after all-time high in the Canadian dollar. I mean, look at gold, actually. When you look at gold on a chart, I mean, this does not look like sustainable. I mean, I would expect nothing but this trend to continue, such a strong trend like this, but it just does not look sustainable, this breakout here. I think we're going to see some sort of reversion at some point. But gold is doing what it's meant to do, which is protecting you from the Canadian dollar declining. You're also seeing some safe haven in the United States dollar as well. Obviously, if you know about the dollar reserve currency, I won't get onto that. One thing that will impact inflation, keep inflation high, things that are going to impact inflation over the coming decade is things like productivity declining. Because if you're spending the same amount of dollars, your workers are producing less, that is just a tailwind essentially for inflation. And we've just seen productivity that is absolutely collapsed here in Canada. So basically, with this 50 basis points cut, it's really not a big deal in my opinion. I don't think it's really going to affect things massively. We're going to be doing another interview here with John Flynn, who's going to talk about all the data surrounding this. I think I'm going to be talking to him either tomorrow, over the next coming few days, and we'll have that out in a couple of weeks. But yes, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. So I want to thank you so much for being on this live stream today. If you've enjoyed it, then maybe check out this video here. And if you're looking for a VPN to protect your privacy and you also want to help out the channel, you know where to go, expressvpn.com/marketmania. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.